So what steps are we taking to make sure that our garden and our chickens don't suffer in the middle of this heat? Hey, how's it going, everybody? Welcome back to our Christian Homestead. Again, my name is Jason, and we're in Southwest Ohio, and it has been extraordinarily hot, right? It's that way across most of the country right now, and it's really hard sometimes for people to deal with that heat. And when you're trying to like grow food, raise a garden, have chickens, you know, there's heat creates a lot of issues. For instance, you don't really want to be outside in the heat watering your garden, but at the same time your garden needs plenty of water, right? So there's a balance there. Also, another thing is my chickens, they need water. They ain't taken care of. It's really stinking hot. We don't always want to be outside taking care of chickens in the heat, right? And heat doesn't necessarily bother me, but it's hot. You go outside and you start sweating like crazy. It's not comfortable. People like to be comfortable, you know? Yeah. But the chickens need water. The chickens need taken care of. They need to be kept somewhat cool, right? So there's all kinds of obstacles that this heat creates. So what we're going to talk about today is how we're dealing with this excessive heat, right? It's been excessive heat, right? Everybody's had excessive heat warnings, excessive heat watches, heat advisories. Okay, how are we dealing with it? So what steps are we taking to make sure that our garden and our chickens don't suffer in the middle of this heat? One of the things when you're growing food, especially growing the amount of food that we're trying to grow, you see behind us, big massive garden, bush beans here, summer squashes, zucchinis, summer squashes and zucchinis. You see more bush beans over here, a lot of tomato plants there, a lot of container gardens over there, right? So there's a lot of things out here. Corn down there, more beans down here. This is diatomaceous earth we put on it, by the way. Not any chemical, it's just diatomaceous earth. But when you're trying to grow that much food, you got to keep it watered. Heat is very hard on it, right? If it's not got water, water takes the nutrients up to the plant, water supports the plant, water supports fruit growth. You got to have water, and it's hot right now. So what happens, right? Especially with container gardening, watering in the heat is extremely important. And since we do a lot of container gardening and raised bed gardening, it's very important to make sure they stay moist. That soil stays moist and ready to bring nutrients into the plants, right? You see in the heat, these resin containers, they heat up, right? Because they conduct heat. So it's really gonna bake that soil that's inside. And now this is a green stalk, okay? And they obviously are self-watering. You can pour the water in here and it flows down, but you have to do that a little more often. With these taters that are doing absolutely phenomenal, you have to keep them moist. You have to keep watering them. And the heat is a little worse. They're in grow bags, and the dirt is it's a little dry. I don't think it is on down in there, but these grow bags do, they don't heat up that bad, but they do allow for airflow, which is going to dry the dirt out, and then the heat that's going to dry out faster. So you got to make sure they're watered appropriately. And in order to do that, the time you water is actually fairly important. Don't water in the middle of the day. It's so hot, you're going to burn yourself up. But also, a lot of that water is going to go up in evaporation. Okay, it's not going to stay in the soil and bring nutrients and life to your plant the way you want it to. So water in the evening. It's okay to water in the evening, especially containers, things like that. It's fine. It's going to be okay. Or you water early in the morning. Okay, you're out of the heat. The plants are out of the heat, but make sure they have water to sustain them for the heat. And like I said, for container gardening, it's really imperative because the containers conduct heat. The ground can hold water, especially if you've had rain recently, like we had a ton of rain recently. So like the ground can hold the water and hold the water deeper. And like our tomato plants, they haven't been watered in days, but we had a ton of water. We had a ton of rain before that, before the heat came up. So the tomatoes are fine. They're in the ground. They're doing good. There's plenty of moisture in that ground still. But the containers, they lose it very fast. Water runs out. They get too hot. Things of that nature. So make sure your containers are watered really well. But if you look, these bush beans are big, massive, beautiful plants for a bush bean, and they got a lot of blossoms on them all of a sudden. But to top water these beans here, it's going to push them down. It's going to push these plants down and really be harmful to the plant itself. And also, if these leaves get wet on any kind of bean necessarily, and then the sun comes out, then it's going to scorch these leaves and really send that plant into shock. So the goal is to not send that plant into shock, to keep it looking beautiful, to keep it being healthy, and to make sure it can produce as much fruit as possible. Really, it's going to be the same with these summer squashes. While they don't really get shocked the same, I think they're a little more durable than these beans are, which beans are durable, but you want to keep your plant healthy and stress-free, right? And we all want to be healthy and stress-free. The plants need to be too. They are living things. So the problem is finding a watering solution for these raised beds. These 4 raised beds here need some need watering solutions. And we don't really want to spend the time out in the heat to do it. And it's really a time consumer to try and water the bush beans, because you got to get the water hose and the wand up underneath it, try to water the ground but not the tops, because we don't want to cause all the problems on top of the plant. You don't want to knock blossoms off. You can knock blossoms off of your plants by trying to put a water hose through it and trying to do all that other stuff. So we've got to find a watering solution for that, and our solution is this: soaker hoses. These flat soaker hoses work wonderful for gardens. We have some on the ground back here behind me. We've been using these around the tomato plants and pepper plants for a long time, and they work really well because tomato plants don't need to be top watered either. They need to be bottom watered. So you need to water the ground but not the leaves. It can really cause disease and fungus and bacteria problems in your tomato plant if you top water. So these work really well. We run these soaker hoses up and down all of our garden in the ground, and we connect them to this right here, and these things can open and close each valve. So we're going to run that soaker hose through those beds, but I'm going to spare you those details because who cares about watching somebody run a soaker hose, right? And the next thing that's really can be an issue for us is the chickens. If you're not a chicken keeper or know much about chickens, chickens are very hot already. They have an internal body temperature of about 107 to 108, maybe as low as 104. Some chickens may vary, but it can be up to 108 degrees inside. So the heat is actually harder on them than the cold weather. So it's really important to keep them cool. Heat can be very difficult. It can actually kill them. They can die of heat a lot faster than they can die of cold. So you got to do things to lower their body temperature already. One thing that we do is we take care of their water, make sure it's clean, fresh, cool. But just clean, fresh, cool water doesn't always last as long or do as good of a job lowering their body temperature. How you girls doing, huh? What about it? What about it, sweetness? I'm gonna lose the chicken. They went tootie. So one of the things we do for the chickens to keep their body temperature down and also keep them hydrated, because they do a lot of panting. So when they pant, they lose moisture out of their mouth. So you gotta keep them hydrated, but also keep their body temperature regulated. Put a little ice, okay? You take this ice. We just use some plastic storage containers, and we fill them up with water. Obviously, the same make ice. Put it in our storage freezer, and just take a block, and we put it inside their water, right? So we do that kind of middle of the day. Keeps their water cold. Give them fresh water, cold water. They love it, and it brings their body temperature down. And while they do love the water, and water is great, you know, there's other things you can do as well. For instance, give the chickens an ice cold treat. It's very important to keep them active as well, the best you can. Activity for chickens is a major deal for them. Keeps their mood up, keeps their stress level from low, and keeps them laying regularly. Activity level is really one of the driving points for consistent laying. Keeping happy, healthy, active chickens. So one thing we do for that in the heat, because they will lay around and try to stay cool, obviously, who wouldn't? One thing to do is give them ice cold treats. And a delicious ice cold treat that they love is watermelon. Right? We got a watermelon. We can kind of split one with us and get some for us, some for the chickens. One thing about watermelon as well is it hydrates them very well and gives them electrolytes. So it's cold, it's flavorful, a little sweet. They love that, and it hydrates them and just does everything for them. They love it. And when they see this pan, they know something good's coming. There you go, kids. happy chickens. That'll cool them off nicely. And there's other things we can do for them as well. We have a shade cloth on top of the run. They need shade, so shade's very important to them. And so shade, cold water, fresh water, cold treats, things like that, that'll keep them going. So there you have it. All these things are ways you can beat the heat even on your homestead. You can keep growing food, keep raising chickens, keep being productive even in the heat. All right, that's very important, because you don't want to just let things go by the wayside. All your hard work, all your time, all your effort, all your space is wasted if you let that heat beat it. Okay, so thank you guys so much for watching. We do appreciate it. My name is Jason, Our Recreational Homestead. We love y'all. God bless you and goodbye.